energy and carbon policy are central to guide our efforts toward a more sustainable future. The need to safeguard the Earth's environment while maintaining a secure supply of energy is the key point. Energy is indeed fundamental to the prosperity and the security of nations. Energy policy should address at least 4 great challenges in the near future: energy security, environmental protection, the transition toward renewables, and access to energy. For most countries, energy security means reducing their dependence on fossil fuels. For all those countries where fossil fuels are not indigenous but imported from abroad, reducing the share of oil, gas, and coal consumption would inherently increase energy security. Local energy sources should be exploited in order to avoid fuel shortages. The dynamics of some important geopolitical forces would be also affected by the reduced use of fossil fuels. When fossil fuels cannot be replaced, emission control strategies should be implemented. To this regard, the rationale behind carbon capture is not to shut down coal or natural gas, it is to shut down carbon emissions. The introduction of a carbon tax on fossil power plants or a cap-and-trade control scheme would promote carbon capture technologies. These refer to the ensemble of technological processes that avoid carbon dioxide being emitted into the atmosphere. CO2 can be captured from the flue gas of the power plant, or alternatively, the carbon fuel can be decarbonized prior to its combustion or oxycombusted. The captured CO2 is eventually compressed and transported via pipeline to an underground storage site. Deep geologic formations such as depleted oil and gas wells, coal seams, and deep saline aquifers are ideal candidates as underground storage sites. From a policy perspective, the carbon constraint on new power plants could be enforced by setting a stringent emission factor, which is measured in kilograms of carbon dioxide emitted per kilowatt-hour of electricity produced. The next challenge energy policy should address is the risk posed by energy production on our environment. Greenhouse gases caused primarily by the combustion of fossil fuels might alter our climate in dangerous ways not even fully predictable by current climate models. We already have cases from the past where environmental policy succeeded in controlling emissions. This is the case, for instance, of the Montreal Protocol on substances that deplete the ozone layer. Ratified in the late 80s, the treaty was worldwide accepted and emission control was enforced. In the 90s, a cap-and-trade scheme was successfully applied in the US to control acid rain caused by sulfur dioxide and, to a lesser extent, nitrogen oxides. But carbon emissions are so widely and firmly connected to nearly every energy and industry sector that it will be extremely tough to have a fast transition from fossil to decarbonized economy. If we think of the huge amount of infrastructure that is already in place for fossil fuels, we will realize that a tight carbon lock-in exists within our economy. Energy policy should find ways through this current scenario in order to unlock our future from fossil carbon fuels. Speaking about transitions, energy policy is already leading the path toward renewables in some countries. This is the third key challenge to address: scale up and full establishment of renewable power sources in our economy. Solar photovoltaic production has seen an accelerated growth in countries like Italy and Germany, where feed-in tariff programs have been sustained during the past years. The lesson learned from the German experience well indicates that PV support levels should gradually decrease as larger deployment volumes are achieved. This is the only way to keep support costs under control. The so-called breathing cap, introduced in 2009, permitted a dynamic adjustment on PV support level based on installed capacities. A great hurdle is now on how to manage the grid when increasing amounts of intermittent renewables are in the electricity mix. In fact, the electricity market regulation and support schemes of renewables must face the incontrovertible requirement of having a reliable grid at all times. Finally, the lack of access by the world's poor to energy and other basics needed for economic advancement is something international energy policy should tackle. The potential is there to promote technological change and behavioral patterns that are less energy and carbon intensive. The role of energy policy is eventually that to avoid distortions that lead to the inefficient use of natural resources and environmental degradation. Energy and environmental policy should be long-term and ensure that we face the true costs of our actions, that include environmental and social costs.